Welcome to Bamfordrose, and it's forum chat time. This week I've taken a few screenshots of comments from our own YouTube channel, and it's going to be a bit of a quick fire round. There's going to be quite a few subjects covered, so hopefully there's something here that appeals to everyone. Firstly, there's a couple of comments about the benefits of a primary or secondary cat delete. There's a question on V12 and there's a question on V8, and across the different emissions levels of cars going from EU4, EU5 and across V8 and V12, there's sometimes different end results and different options, and sometimes you can't do something to a V8 that you can do to a V12. So I can see that it's easy to get confused. So I'll just answer directly a couple of comments that have been raised, but then say watch out for a future question of the week where we will go through specifically car by car, system by system, what options are available. So firstly, John asks, what difference does the secondary decat make to the brake horsepower? It made a positive difference to the exhaust note on my 2011 Virage. So obviously the V12 has primary catalysts in the exhaust manifold, and then further downstream it has secondary catalysts. You can do a simple and quick mod of doing a secondary catalyst removal, a secondary cat delete, and you will get a nicer exhaust note. This is going to be more of what you've got. So it's going to keep that Aston characteristic, bass, burbly type Aston note. When you do a secondary decat, it's just going to give you more volume of that same characteristic, which is the main reason someone would choose to do a secondary decat only on a V12, because they're just after a little bit more sound. Because really the performance increase that you get is not going to be that noticeable. There is going to be an exhaust back pressure reduction, therefore the engine will be producing a bit more power, but it's only going to be in the order of about 5 to 10 kPa exhaust back pressure reduction, and that's going to be a horsepower increase of less than 10 bhp, which if you've got a 512 horsepower V12 Vantage or DBS, 10 horsepower or so in 510 is not really going to be that noticeable. You might notice that the rate of change of engine speed acceleration is a bit quicker, but more likely it will be the performance, or your perception of the performance is increased because the noise is a bit louder. For any appreciable performance gain on the V12, you need to get rid of the primary catalyst. So whether that was a primary decat with a high flow secondary keeping the existing exhaust manifolds on the V12, or it was our bespoke kit, then whichever way you do it, searching out a better performing car, better accelerating car, more responsive on throttle, even at low speed torque, we're not just talking about high speed power, then if you really want more performance out of the car, you have to get rid of the primary cap. And now jumping over to the same sort of question on a V8. Here we have a question which picks up from a previous video that we did saying that the Vantage S exhaust back box is the best silencer to give the best Aston exhaust note on your V8. So this would be the 2011 to 2014 V8 Vantage S back box. And it says that I have a 4.3 and your recommendation was the V8 S back box and a secondary cat delete. This sounds like the route I would want to go, however I'm struggling to find secondary cat deletes for the 4.3. They seem to be just for the 4.7. So this is the slight confusion over the different hardware specs. 4.3 has a downstream catalyst, it doesn't have a catalyst in the exhaust manifold. The catalyst is in the sort of intermediate pipe area, and in the big catalyst can that it's got, one for each side of the engine, there are actually two catalysts in that same can, although it would appear like one catalyst on the outside. So you can't really fit a decat pipe to a 4.3 because that would leave you with no catalyst whatsoever. So for a really good cost-effective modification of a 4.3, yes, get that V8 S Vantage back box to give you the best exhaust note, and then remove your catalyst assembly and perhaps remove the front brick. That is the biggest restriction. That is a 900 cell density per square inch catalyst, and when you remove that primary brick from that catalyst assembly, what you're left with is the secondary brick within that can, which is a 400 cell density cat. So really, if you fitted a 200 cell density cat compared to that 400 cell density cat, there isn't going to be much difference in terms of performance gain or noise. So a really good cost-effective mod for your 4.3 V8 is to remove the primary cat from that catalyst can, couple that with a Vantage S back box, remap the ECU, N400 replication of the air box, and that's going to be a really good increase for what is in effect not a great deal of spend. Next comment is from a Stuart Harrison. Stuart writes, "Who would buy an Aston Martin after listening to all the doom and gloom you spread? I was considering bringing my car to you, but you're so negative and full of woe, I think I will look elsewhere." Aston Martins are without doubt one of the best sports cars that you can buy, especially say a 4.3 V8 Vantage starting at 25 up to 40,000 for 4.7 before you get into the seat of a Vantage S. What else can you get for that money that looks as gorgeous as that does? But despite the cars being absolutely drop dead gorgeous, there's a little bit of jeopardy to the whole love affair, and the pitfalls of some of the ownership experience is exactly what this channel is trying to put out in terms of all the mechanical issues, electrical that could go wrong with these cars, what to do to fix them, what not to do in terms of buying a car that's harboring one of these issues. If you're going to look elsewhere, then perhaps you mean into a Porsche or something like that, and crikey, if you went on Porsche forums, you think Astons go wrong majorly badly, then Porsches do equally. So do any car brand for that matter, whether it be Lotus, McLaren, they all have their problems. Or when you say you're going to go elsewhere, does that mean you're going to stick with the Aston love affair but perhaps go to a different garage? Well, if you go to a garage that aren't fleshing out all these problems, aren't offering solutions for them, which is better than a dealer solution because it's going to be more cost effective, it's going to be a high quality engineering solution, then I think you'll regret not arming yourself with all the info that this channel provides. Next question is from Clyde, who asks, does the version of the V12 Vantage, this is DB7 V12 Vantage, suffer the same misfire problems as DB9, which leads to all the bad failures that can happen in terms of cat ingestion and engine failure? So the exhaust manifold on DB7 is very different to the DB9. The DB7 doesn't have a primary catalyst in the exhaust manifold. It has a downstream catalyst, but that's quite far downstream. So even if there was misfire that caused that catalyst to fail, there's no way it could become ingested. The DB7 has the same inlet and exhaust cam valve overlap as a DB9, so there is the phenomenon present that it will suck gas or debris up into the combustion chamber from the exhaust manifold, but because it's not going to have any ceramic debris there from a failed cat, then no, a DB7 cannot suffer the same cat ingestion problem as a DB9 or a V12 Vantage or DBS or any V12 variant that has the primary catalyst present in the exhaust manifold. DB7 does suffer from the odd intermittent coil failure, the odd misfire caused by coil failure, and it's very common on DB7 to replace all 12 coils to get rid of misfire. Unfortunately on DB7, the misfire diagnostics, the AMDS kit is not as intelligent as what it is on Gaydon era V12s. On Gaydon era V12s, you can plug the diagnostic kit in, look at the real-time misfire, see which cylinders are misfiring and just change spark plugs and coils on those particular cylinders. Unfortunately on DB7 there's no real-time misfire counter, so you can't go in and interrogate which cylinder is misfiring, so you often find yourself doing all 12 if you've got a misfire. In terms of piston wear, liner wearing oval, the dreaded DB9 tick, I've seen DB7 blocks that have worn the liner oval, but all petrol engines at some point are going to experience this wear, because on the thrust side of the liner is where wear is going to occur, and inevitably that's going to wear a liner a little bit oval. I have heard some DB7 engines with the tick, but in this garage at least, compared to DB9s, it's a lot less. I don't think that's any factor of engine spec changes. I think that's just more of a factor of there are more DB9s out there than DB7s. Next question is from Harry. What is your personal opinion on keeping or dealing with the tyre pressure monitor system? My V8S is needing sensors soon. Is it a luxury to have this functionality? If I delete, will that cause problems when I come to sell? So the sensors in a tyre pressure monitor sensor system, they typically get low on voltage after about 5 or 7 years, and then you're going to have an error light on the dashboard fling up, which is going to be interrogated by the diagnostic system, and it will say low battery voltage, even though each individual tyre pressure is working okay. So if one of them pings up a code that it's low on voltage, then the others aren't far behind, so inevitably you need to replace all of them at the same time, really. They're about £150 each sensor, and with the labour to remove the tyre and fit the sensor, then to replace all 4, it's going to be about an £800 job to get the system recommissioned. Do you need it? Well, when you jump in the car in the morning, if you had a low pressure tyre, there's a very good early warning system that before you drive off, you are alerted that you need to put some more pressure in the tyre, or perhaps you've got a slow puncture. But you could do that by putting a gauge on yourself, or really you could do that visually, because even though the tyre may have only dropped 10 psi, its profile is very much different when you look at the wheel and tyre on the tarmac. When you're on the move, and I know this from my own experience, I've suffered a puncture whilst driving, you feel that something is not quite right in the handling or the feel of the car before the tyre pressure monitor system pings up an error on the dashboard. So its use on the go, I'm not that convinced is really that valuable. This question asks my own personal opinion. I would delete the system from my car, which is very, very easy. I don't advocate buying any of these defeat devices out there. Just get the body module reprogrammed with a different software configuration that is TPMS inactive, and then at a future point in time, if someone wanted to recommission the system, then they can have the standard body control module configuration flashed back in by the sensors, and the system will be working again. Because the system is not that valuable, I don't think it devalues a car that has its TPMS system turned off. And now the cars are getting older and older. Certainly the earlier tyre smart cars, so this would be the early V8 and the DB9s, the cars that don't have each individual corner displayed in the dashboard. It's actually quite rare to come across a car that has that system working these days. So I really don't think the system being decommissioned devalues a car at all. Next question is from Vantage Driver. This is going back to the forum chat we had the other week about the crunchy gear change on that V8 Vantage going from first to second. He says, what's the crunch noise as it goes into second? It seems that Mike is suggesting that nothing is particularly unusual with this gearbox. Yeah, I purposely didn't label that gearbox a problem because I wanted feedback from V8 owners as to how their car shifted from first into second. Now, it's very, very common that, especially on thick oil when it's cold, that the first few shifts from first to second are stiff. It's very uncommon to find a car that crunches into second like this car does, but I know from talking to a few owners that it is possible, and those owners that are mechanically sympathetic, they know that as soon as it gets warm it's not an issue. They just drive around the problem and don't try and go for second gear when it's difficult to engage. Where this can become a problem is new people into the brand don't realise that that's a feature, and change into second for the first time, often when they bought the car and they've got it home, maybe the first cold start and drive off, and it crunches into second and think this is a problem. I think that people who are mechanically sympathetic can understand, okay, this is a problem, I need to drive around, it's just because the oil is a bit thick, and they will drive around it. It's just they don't know, did the previous owners do that? And they don't know for the long term, is their gearbox compromised because someone might have been crunching it into second. If I was looking at buying a car and I jumped in it and I drove off for the first time and it crunched into second gear like this one does, I must admit I would be questioning the health of that gearbox. And obviously there's a synchro issue there, and it is grinding the gearbox going into second, so there's bound to be some wear. But is it a terminal gearbox failure? No, I doubt it. Next comment is from Critical Mass Creative, and it is a comment about the suspension bush video that we did. And it says, I was wondering your thought on swapping the bushes to what ProDrive use. ProDrive have some bushes for race cars which are on rose joints and are adjustable. And yes, the price of Aston wishbone arms is getting absolutely astronomical. I mean, £376 plus VAT for lower arms, about £275 to £300 depending on the model for upper arms plus VAT. It's incredibly expensive, especially if you need 8 suspension arms. And then ultimately you're buying 8 suspension arms that are compromised and destined to fail in the same way that the current arms that you're replacing have failed. So yeah, there's got to be a better solution out there, and this is something that we are looking at. I'm looking at producing a machine from billet, upper and lower arms, with a different bush in, and the bushes can be selected for a comfort drive or a more sporty drive, and we're looking at coupling that suspension arm kit to a damper, which is going to offer an alternative from retrofitting Bilstein dampers to the earlier Dynamics cars, because at £850 plus VAT per damper, that's also pretty horrific pricing. And in the aftermarket world, we can better that parts quality and beat it on price. That's not a short-term project, it's going to take a while, so it's a case of watch this space. Next comment is from Mr. Rusty about our DB7 video, and he says, so really buy a DB9? Well, yes and no. The DB9 is driving dynamics of this century, quite literally, and the DB7 drives of its age. If you are in love with the DB7 looks, the classic nature of a DB7, then the DB7 attracts a certain gent to it, and always go with your heart and select the car which appeals visually the best to you. But really, if you want a better driving machine, then yes, a DB9 is undoubtedly the better driver's machine. But that's taking nothing away from DB7. It's a great car, it's got some charm, it's got some character. It's just if you press on a or B road in that car, then it could get messy. Really hope you liked that little roundup there of a few different comments on different parts of our own social media. As ever, it really helps us if you can like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next forum chat.